Hello, everybody. All right, so welcome to the Mikestand for Tuesday, November the 21st, 2023. Of course, we are going to still give it a few minutes. But as we wait, let's see, what can I talk about today? Let's see. Well, let's see. Let's see. Well, um, let's see. Let me see now. Oh yeah, today as part of my afternoon, cartoon watchings, of course. I was I'm finally getting a chance to see season three of season three of the Young Justice series, the one that came out in 2019, Outsiders. That one's going to be interesting to see, and I guess that happened. That happened 2 years after the second season, and then prior to that, of course, there was a 5 year difference. So, let's see now. As always, of course, if you guys haven't already, if you guys can like and share the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people in here to engage. Also, if anything here grabs your attention that we talk about tonight, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. Also, let me see. All right, thank you for the like and the share. Um, I've only got one story for tonight, and then we're gonna, of course, have the wrestling wrap up and wrestling wrap up and wrestling wrap up and the this day in each history. We had three people. I guess we're back down to two now. But yeah. So the one article we probably will go over tonight, and I'll also just also gonna just hit up some more casual conversations as well. Rob Liefeld's infamous Captain America art sells for six figures at auction. So we're gonna look at that from Bleeding Fool, and then of course I'm just trying to have just trying to talk a little bit about here, just about other stuff too, just to get a little bit of time going here. Yeah, so, and as you guys know, I did watch the majority of Boy Named Charlie Brown the other day on MeTV. That was, again, it's always nice when you get a chance to go back and see those older cartoons. Like one of the things that I've been watching a lot of the Golden Age stuff, through MeTV's like Tune In With Me program, and stuff as well, some other things. Um, so I'm getting a chance to watch, like a lot of the Golden Age Warner Brothers stuff, a lot of the Golden Age MGM stuff, even the Golden Age Paramount stuff of like, the older Fleischer Studio Popeye cartoon, the later Famous Studios. And then, of course, Universal was the one that distributed a lot of the Walter Lantz stuff from Woody Woodpecker, um, Chili Willy, Andy Panda, Wally Walrus, Gabby Gator, the Berries, Mom Pa Kettle, a lot of that stuff. So, um, kind of funny because most of us, when we hear like the names like when we hear somebody like Dawes Butler, we automatically think, of course, Hanna Barbera, with Yogi Bear and a number of the Hanna Barbera cartoons. But one of the things I've been discovering recently, even before he got involved with Hanna Barbera in the late '50s, there he had been doing a lot of stuff for Walter Lantz too, providing. Hey, Woody, Walter Lantz forever, yeah, yeah. And it's funny because his wife Grace Stafford actually provided the voice of Woody Woody Woodpecker from like 1950 through the end of the Woody Woodpecker shorts in 1972. It's kind of funny because as I was just talking about with Dawes Butler, you know, Dawes Butler forever, yep. As I was just talking about with Dawes Butler, Mel Blanc's another. You have some of these. You hear some of these names in voice acting, right? And when you hear them, they're usually you consider them synonymous with a particular studio. Dawes Butler, probably Hanna-Barbera, but as I just explained, he did work for other studios too before that, Universal as well. Mel Blanc with Warner Brothers. But one of the things I found out is that when in like the first season of Woody Woodpecker shorts, dating back to his debut in the Andy Panda cartoon Knock Knock, and eventually his own series. For that first year, Mel Blanc provided the voice of Woody, and they even after Blanc left and went to Warner Brothers after that first year, they would still use the Woody's Laugh, the Mel Blanc's version of Woody's Laugh, up until Walter Land Studios decided to shut down for a year. I think it was in late 1948, early 1949, around there. Don't let yourself forget. Turn on your TV set for Huckleberry. Yeah, Dawes Butler. Dawes Butler provided his voice for a number of the Hanna-Barbera cartoons. You're right. Huckleberry Hound, Yogi Bear. I think even Boo Boo in the TV series. And later, I think Don Messick took over later on. But Quick Draw McGraw, Snagglepuss. I think a lot of the Hanna-Barbera male characters were done by Dawes Butler, and Don Messick did some too, like Ranger Smith and Boo Boo, as I said. So Mel Blanc did Woody? Really? Yeah, and okay, so Woody Woodpecker first made it to movie screens in, I think it was like 1940, 41. His first appearance was not actually his cartoon, though. His first appearance was in the Andy Panda short Knock Knock. Okay? And I guess he proved so popular that they decided to do his own show, or his own set of shorts. In fact, throughout the 40, even though he only did it for like the 1 year, and then he left, I think, for Warner Brothers, and I think Ben Hardaway and Kent Rogers each took over for a little, like it might have been Kent. I think Ben Hardaway was the one who eventually took over throughout the rest of the 40s until Walter Lantz Productions went on a hiatus for a year. Wow, Mike, you keep educating. Well, I always, that's one of the things I like to do. Snagglepuss was a great thespian. Yes, exit stage right. Yep. Yeah, so so a lot, it's funny because another example that I recently found out in this time when I've been watching a lot of these classic cartoons too. Oh, I know there's some film of Mel Blanc doing the Jack Bunny show. He was showing it. I just recently found out, because I always thought, I know later she did it. I know that June Foray was Tweety's voice in later years, maybe after Blanc's death. But I had always thought that she always did Tweety, right? I just found out recently that actually throughout the majority of the time, up until his death, Mel Blanc was the one who was actually doing Tweety Bird. I taught Putty Tat. I did. Anyways, back to what I was getting at too. So when Walter Lantz Productions decided to shut down for a year, I think it was 48 or 40, they shut down for 49, and then when they came back in 1950, they held open auditions for somebody to do Woody's voice. and Grace Stafford, who I don't know, she'd married him already or not, but Grace Stafford, who would eventually become Walter Lance's wife, won the role of Woody. And for the first, like from 1950 to 1958, she asked Walter not to give her credit as Woody in the, because she was afraid that particularly the kids would be disappointed if they found out that Woody's voice was a woman instead of a guy. Albeit, as I've pointed out before too, you know, that's always been somewhat of a common practice where you have women doing like higher pitched male voices, or like prepubescent boys, or like animal characters that have higher male animal characters that have higher um, pitch voices. Let's see. Augie Doggy and Doggy Daddy. I loved all of them. Yeah, let's see. Augie Doggy might have been. Yeah, Augie Doggy was probably Dawes Butler. Doggy Daddy, as I understand it, was actually John Stevenson, who actually had quite a. John Stevenson also had quite a voice career himself. Aside from doing, of course, Doggy Daddy, he um, also was Doctor Doom in the '67 Fantastic Four series. Um, let's see. I think he lent his voice a few times on some guest spots on G.I. Joe. I know that. And he was Mr. Slate too. He was Mr. Slate in the Flintstones as well. So let's see. Doggy Daddy did the Jimmy Durante. Yeah. June Farah. There is someone whose career I haven't learned enough about. It's June Foray I was talking about, not June Farah. June Foray, Foray. June Foray was known for, she was Granny's voice in a lot of the Hanna-Barbera Brothers cartoons. She lent her voice to, again, she was a longtime voice actor, and Bea Benaderet as well, who would eventually provide the voice of Betty Rubble. She also did a lot of female voice characters for Warner Brothers in the throughout the 40s and 50s as well. Oh, that is funny. Yep. So yeah. Anyway, so yeah, we're at the 13-minute mark here. Yeah, so I spent quite a bit of time there. You know, I do know that for much of the pretty much from throughout, with the exception of his time when he went into, when he served a year in the U.S. military. It's like Jack Mercer, Mae Quetzal, and Jackson Beck were that was basically the voice cast of like many some primarily the Popeye famous shorts. Only that one year where Jack Mercer went and served in the U.S. Army did they have to bring a couple other guys in to do Popeye's voice there. But let's see. Mike, you are a font of knowledge. Well, thank you, Wooby. You Woody. First, Ricky Squirrel. Rocket Jace. Oh, Rocky of Bullwinkle. Yeah, I think June Foray did Rocky as well. Yeah, you're right there. I think. Yeah. So, anyways, we're at 14 minutes now, so I think I'm going to go ahead and get into the article here. I needed, since I only had the one article, I wasn't sure how long that was going to be. I needed something to talk about, so I just figured I might as well just talk cartoons for a few minutes, because I know I don't always take the opportunity to talk cartoons, particularly classic cartoons, when I'm on here. So I figured I might as well just do that. So, anyways, So, as I said tonight, the one article we're going to go over is from Bleeding Fool here. I'll pull that up. Let's see. All right, so here it is. I'm going to go through this. All right, now Rob Liefeld, I know some of our comic fans know, is I believe he's an comic artist. So, anyways, let's go ahead and get into this. Rob Liefeld's infamous Captain America art sells for six figures at all. First off, I wonder why it's considered infamous. That'd be my first question. But article by Chris Braley published earlier today. So I guess here it is right here. All right. So when original comic book artwork is put up for auction, it is usually because it has historical value. However, a piece of comic book art may have historical importance um, without necessarily contributing anything significant to the genre. This is the case with this original uncolored um, Captain America art painting by artist Rob Liefeld. According to Heritage Auctions, the original art for this image just sold for a whopping $132,000. Six figures. Wow. So basically a pencil version of this. Uh, hey, Rick. Thanks for dropping it. I don't have my earphones, but I thought I'd say hi. All right. Well, as always, guys, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing this video, see if we can get some more people in here to engage, that'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and/or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. Here we go. Hey, Rick from Woody there, Woody. Uh, anyways, hope you guys are getting set for Thanksgiving this week. Anyways, as we continue on with the article here, what made this promotional image of what made this one promotional image of Marvel's Sentinel of Liberty so special? Some ways, this single depiction of Captain America shown below captured a whole era of quote unquote extreme 90s comics. In the early 1990s, Marvel Comics artists like as Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee, and Todd McFarlane rose to prominence. Books featuring their artwork, such as Spider-Man and X-Men, sold better than ever before. However, they and several other artists left Marvel in 1992 to launch their own company, Image Comics. Of course, as we know, that was the home to like Todd McFarlane's Spawn, among others. I think Um, Despite its success, the abundance of comics resulted in a spectacular boom. This eventually led to the collapse of the whole comic book business in 1994. Marvel Comics was in such a sad state that it canceled nearly every continuing title that wasn't about Spider-Man or mutants. Yeah, sometimes you can produce so much that you flood the market too much. You flood the market too much, and then old girlfriend is swooping through town for a couple of nights, and we're going to have a nice turkey dinner out. Okay, all right, that sounds pretty good. Yeah, but as I was saying here, yeah, you can see that you sometimes can just flood the market so much that you just burst it to where people just get tired of it. Anyways, Marvel approached its former superstar talent with an idea in 1996. They'd give Jim Lee and Rob Liefeld a year to take over four of their biggest comic book series. In the hopes of boosting sales, Fantastic Four and Iron Man were handled by Jim Lee's Wildstorm Studios, and Avengers and Captain America were handled by Rob Liefeld's Extreme Studios. Publishing endeavor was dubbed Heroes Reborn. Fans were ecstatic. The gamble paid off. All right. But when it was announced, Marvel unveiled an early rendering of Liefeld's reimagining of Captain America, seen above, and the human dimensions were clearly not normal. Even for a super soldier, the chest was so absurdly enlarged that the promotional image encapsulated everything wrong with 90s superhero comics at the time, and the image became immediately infamous. Liefeld has since made light of it, really making this artwork a piece of comic history. All right, so that one really went quickly, went a little quicker than I thought it would. Hmm. Where are we at on time then? Wow, 22 minutes. All right. You can only get so much milk out of a cow before she gets mad. Yeah, yeah, that's another way of putting it, Woody. Very interesting way, mind you. But let's see now. Well, let me see if I can find at least one other story because that one, when I got to that one pretty quickly. So I want to just see if there's anything else that maybe coming here. And nothing really here of note that I need per se in. Go back to the comic section real quick to see if there's anything there. No, no, that. All right, we'll go one more time to the news report section. News and opinions here. Let's see anything. Nope. All right. So yeah. So basically, I guess I could go back to founding in the comments and see if anything's come on. Keep on rocking. Yeah. Um. Yeah. So let's see. 24 minutes. So I might go back to. Let me just check one more source here. Anything since I checked earlier? If there's anything up here. That was the alpha. I'm just looking. All right. So. All right. So yeah. So I think I got through. So I guess I will go back to talking about cartoons a bit here. Um. Yeah, because as I was saying, earlier, we were talking a lot about, and it's kind of funny because there are, when you hear certain, you know, voice actors, your initial reaction is, oh yeah, they did this, they did that, and then you look into it a little bit more, they actually did other things too. As we were talking, that was like Mel Blanc and Dawes Butler earlier, um, June Foray, B. Benaderet. Um, let's see. Um, another example of that. Trying to remember some other examples of that. Well, Larry Storch is another one. Larry Storch, probably known for his work in the 70s with Filmation on like works like Groovy Ghoulies, the live action version of the Filmation's Ghostbusters, um, among others. But even before that, he lent his voice to some stuff for I think Universal with Walter Land's production. Actually, no, it wasn't Walter Land. Actually, Larry Storch did stuff for Warner Brothers, not Walter Land. Did stuff for Warner Brothers. He did Crazy Cat and Colonel Rimfire in the late '60s before heading over to let's see, June Foray doing witches and old hags and fractured fairy tales. Was so good. Yeah, and that wasn't the only time she did witches and hags either. There, Woody, she was Witch Hazel too. She was June Foray lent her voice to Witch Hazel as well. F Troop. I don't know what else Larry Stitch did. Storch. You know. Again, I know it was one of the guys who was with Filmation in the '70s there. Oh yeah, let's see. Who else? Oh, Paul Frees is another one. I was just thinking of Paul Frees. Most people remember his work. A lot of the Christmas specials from Rankin Bass. Everything from stuff like Jack Frost, Frosty the Snowman, Santa Claus is Coming to Town. You can hear. In fact, I remember he was I believe he provided the voice of the Burgermeister in Santa Claus is Coming to Town. Paul Frees again lent his voice to a lot of stuff for probably Rankin Bass, probably his most famous work. But even before the Rankin Bass specials, he was he lent his voice to some stuff for Universal, for Walter Land Studios. So that's yeah. So let me see. Who are some of the other greats we can? Of course, we talked about Don. We alluded to Don Messick earlier, who longtime Hanna-Barbera voice actor, provided the voice. Of course, he provided the voice for Ranger Smith, Boo Boo, Barney Rubble from the Flintstones. Actually, no, that wasn't Don Messick. Actually, that was Mel Blanc too. I believe Mel Blanc did Barney Rubble as well. Let's see, Don Messick did, of course, Scooby Doo. He did Astro as well for the Jetsons. Yeah, and then Mel Blanc also did Elroy in the Jetsons as well. So he worked for Hanna-Barbera as well in a few things. So yeah, so let's see. And then some of the other great like female voice actors of the Golden Age included, women like Sarah Berner, Cecil Roy, who was the voice of Casper the Friendly Ghost in a lot of the famous studios production. Mae Quetzal, as we talked about earlier, she primarily known for as the voices of Betty Boop and Olive Oyl. I think she also did Little Audrey as well. Yabba dabba doo. Mm-hmm. Astro was the proto Scooby Doo. I guess you could argue that because after obviously the Jetsons came out before. Jetsons came out before Scooby Doo, so you could argue that. Could make that would be a good point you could make. Let's see, Arnold Stang and Sid Raymond were big in the Arnold Stang provided the voice of Herman, the Herman Catnip series, and then of course Sid Raymond provided the voice of Catnip as well as Baby Huey and a lot of the Harvey Tunes, Baby Huey shorts there. So and they both have pretty. Arnold Stang would later go on to work for Hanna-Barbera, finding the voice of Top Cat. Top Cat, the unbelievable Top Cat of the game. It's a trip. It's a championship. It's the most tip top. Top Cat. So yeah. So anyways, let's see where are we at 31 here. Yeah. So now in the golden age, there were of course before television, before they started actually having cartoons on TV in 1948, a lot of the studios would some studios like Warner Brothers, like MGM, and Disney, they would actually produce their own cartoons to use as part of the openers in their movies, and then other studios like Paramount and Universal would contract out to other companies. Of course, Universal would contract out to Walter Lantz, and that's what we got. Of course, Woody Woodpecker, Chilly Willy, Andy Panda, Wally Walrus, Beaky Buzzard, I believe, or Buzzy Buzzard, I believe. Oh yeah, Top Cat, I was a big fan. Yep. Astro would say, "Hello, George," like, "Hello, George." Scooby like, I think. Oh yeah, Top Cat I was a big fan. Yeah, but as I was saying, a lot of the some of the studios would contract out, like as I said, Universal would contract out to Walter Lantz. Paramount would contract out to Famous Studios, which of course still was well into. I think I think they finally started ending in like 57, 58 when Famous Studios stopped producing and releasing the Popeye cartoons. Of course, 2 years before King Feature Syndicate would come out with the 1960 Popeye the Sailor cartoon that was on TV. But of course, aside from Popeye, and we were talking about earlier how Mae Quetzal, by the voice of Olive Oyl and Betty Boop, she also, she was the first voice of Betty Boop and on Olive Oyl. And then in 1938, I believe, when Fleischer Studios moved down to Florida, Mae Quetzal gave up the role to Margie Hines for a few years there because she wanted to focus on starting a family. And then after Famous Studios ended up buying out Fleischer, they moved back up to New York, and Mae Quetzal eventually took over the role. I was never really sure what happened but I sure knew that at some point, all of a sudden, all the Popeye cartoons got crummy. Got well. I mean, it, again, I don't know which Popeye cartoons you're comparing to. Um, like Fleischer did the Popeye cartoon. Fleischer Studios did the Popeye cartoon up through 1942. Actually, if you're talking about like towards the end of the Fleischer, if you're talking about like some of the cartoons from like let's say 40 to 42, before Famous Studios bought out Fleischer, right? The Fleischer brothers, Max and Dave Fleischer, they actually started having some issues between each other. They were having some major disagreements to the point they couldn't work together. Max, of course, was the producer of the cartoon. Dave was often the director of the cartoons. But they just got so bitter towards each other that they just could no longer work together. So I don't know if that's what you're talking about, Woody. And that would have been happening like 40 to 42, I believe, when all that was going on. Let's see. And then, as I said, in 42, Famous Studios um, bought up Fleischer Studios. I believe at least one of the brothers did continue. I don't know which brother actually left the industry, but one of the brothers did stick around. Granted, had a lot less power than he did before, but a lot of the other staff involved with like Isidore, Sparber, Winston Sharples, Winston Samples. They all continued on doing their parts. You know, roughly speaking, I liked the ones with a black sailor suit, and I didn't like the ones with the white sailor suit. But I do know what you're talking about. There was some kind of transition stage, yeah. Well, okay, so probably the ones that were more with the white suit, those were the later ones. Um, and a lot of the later ones, a lot of the ones in the 40s and into the 50s, a lot of the famous studio ones, most of those shorts were primarily Popeye, Olive, and Bluto. And it was basically the whole thing of Popeye and Bluto fighting over the affections of Olive Oil. You did have a few in there. You had some with Popeye and his nephews. You had, I know back in the early days in the Fleischer and the black and white era, where you had some where Poop Deck Pappy made some appearances. Sweet Pea made some. In fact, one of the cartoons I was just watching the other day was Lost and Foundry, in which it was a point where Sweet Pea actually ended up having to save Popeye and Olive Oil from getting crushed in the factory. He ended up getting, the funny thing about it was they were trying to save him, keep him out of trouble, keep him from getting hurt, and he ended up saving them. So, that was Lost and Foundry. Eugene the Jeep and Alice those came, even though I know those two characters were, I think, a part of the comics at that point in the 40s and 50s. I think on the television side of it, I think Eugene and Alice were not. Well, Alice may have made an appearance or two in the Famous Studios, but I think more or less those two characters came more into prominence with the TV show, with the 60s TV show. The King Features produced TV show that, of course, still had Jack Mercer doing Popeye, Mae Quetzal doing Olive Oil, and Bluto still being done by Jackson Beck. And it's kind of funny because Jackson Beck was, from probably the late 30s, well through, well through the through famous studios, and was one of their aside from doing Pluto and Popeye, he lent his voice as a narrator for the Superman serials in 41 and 42 as well. In fact, Jackson Beck became a pretty well-known narrator for cartoons. He wasn't just a narrator for the Superman cartoons that Fleischer and later Famous produced, but he also lent his voice as narrator for the Adventures of Superman series from Filmation in like the 1966, 67, around there. Also lent his voice as a narrator to G.I. Joe, Real American Hero as well. So let's see. Makes sense? Yep. All right. Well, we're up to 41 minutes now. So that was a nice little trip down cartoons memory lane, though, wasn't it? Me going through all that. With that now, of course, I'm going to move on to the wrestling wrap up here. Of course, last night, WWE had its Monday Night Raw event, the Go Home Raw before this Saturday's this Saturday's Survivor Series. There'll of course be a so in the opening match, Nia Jax defeated Raquel Rodriguez last night. Becky Lynch defeated Xia Li, and then Johnny Gargano defeated Ludwig Kaiser in the ongoing DIY Imperium feud. In a fatal 4-way match to see who the number one contender would be for the WWE Women's Tag Team title, which I believe this is setting up for a match at Survivor Series this weekend. Natalya and Tegan Nox defeated Candice LeRae, Indy Hartwell, Ivy Nile, and Maxine Dupree, and Katana Chance and Kaden Carter. Shinsuke Nakamura defeated Chad Gable. And then in the main event, in a War Games advantage match, the winner of this match was going to get the advantage, the one-man advantage for his team. Drew McIntyre defeated Jey Uso, which, of course, right as it stands right now, for the men's War Games, it's going to be the 4 members of Judgment Day of Finn Balor, Damian Priest, Dominic Mysterio, JD McDonough, and then teaming with Drew McIntyre to take on the face team of Sami Zayn, Jey Uso, Cody Rhodes, Seth Rollins, and then Cody Rhodes was actually dropping hints last night as Raw was going off the air that they were dropping hints that Randy Orton would be making his return at Survivor Series to be part of their team. So there was that. And the updated card, of course, for this weekend's Survivor Series. I'll take a look at that. As I mentioned, of course, you're going to have 2 War Games, right? The men's War Game and the women's War Games match. So the war. Let's see. So in the women's War Games match, as we mentioned earlier, you had Becky Lynch, Bianca Belair, Charlotte Flair, Shotzi, and Shotzi taking on members of Damage Control of Asuka, Bayley, Io Sky, and Kairi Sane. It's also believed that Dakota Kai will be involved in that, and they may be bringing in one more. It's an 8-man, but they might be. Carlito will be taking on Santos Escobar, who recently turned heel against the Latino World Order. Gunther defends the Intercontinental title against The Miz, who kind of got the one up on him last night. The women's world title, Rhea Ripley defends against Zoe Stark in the 10-man tag war games for, as we mentioned before. Drew McIntyre and the members of the Judgment Day of Damian Priest, Dominic Mysterio, Finn Balor, and JD McDonough will be taking on Cody Rhodes, Jey Uso, Sami Zayn, Seth Rollins, and Randy Orton. So that's all of the WWE news I have for you. On the AEW side of it, as it were, there is some talk that MJF may have already. There's a rumor going around that MJF may have already renewed his contract with AEW. Which, if that is true, that's another hit that WWE took in the last few days. Obviously last weekend with Will Ospreay signing with AEW once his, of course, contract with New Japan finishes out in January. So we got all that then. So now with all that being said, today being 2013 and 2008, right? Mm-hmm. All right. So with all that being said, today being Tuesday, November 21st, 2022, let's take a look back at this day in Niche history. So first off, on this day in Niche history, let me head over. Yeah. On this day in Niche history, back in 2001, which was 22 years ago today, the first issue of Canon God Exaction from Dark Horse, from their Dark Horse manga imprint, went on sale on this date back in 2001, 22 years ago today. It sold for $2.99, 48 pages. This book ran for about 20 issues. So on this date back in 2001, 22 years ago today, Dark Horse, through their Dark Horse manga imprint, would release Canon God Exaction number 1. Now, moving ahead we get ready to move ahead to the next piece in Niche history, 2008. On this date in 2008, which was 15 years ago, Walt Disney Pictures would release the film Bolt. So on today's date was the more widespread U.S. Release of Bolt. 4 days after Walt Disney Pictures premiered Bolt at the El Capitan Theater, on 4 days later, as of today, November 21st, 15 years ago today, was the more widespread U.S. release of Bolt from Walt Disney Pictures. And finally, on this date, 10 years ago today, Maurice Mad Dog Vachon, 5-time AWA World Heavyweight Champion, 2-time AWA World Tag Team Champion, and of course, the brother, part of the, he was 84 years old when he passed away here. Part of the famous Vachon family. He was the brother of Paul Vachon, who won many regional tag team titles, including AWA World and Midwest Tag Team Championships in the Pacific Northwest. Sister Vivian, who is the mother, who I believe was the mother of, I don't know, it wasn't Vivian. Mad Dog was also the uncle of the late Luna Vachon. But on this date, 10 years ago today, Maurice Mad Dog Vachon, 5-time AWA World Heavyweight Champion, 2-time AWA World Tag Team Champion, passed away at the age of 84. But with all that, I hope everybody had fun, listening to me tonight. I know we only went over one story, but and news cycles, they're weird that way. Sometimes you have a lot of news one for a few weeks, and you have not so many. But it was also nice to kind of touch upon some cartoon history and stuff like that as well. So, so with that, we'll be back here tomorrow night with more news. Programming note, of course, this week, tomorrow night will be the last broadcast for this week. We'll be taking Thanksgiving and Thanksgiving Friday off. We will be back on Sunday with our panel show. So I hope everybody will be back tomorrow to catch the latest news. We'll probably be, most likely doing, if it's up and stuff like that, we'll probably be doing the Indie Comic Showcase on Bleeding Full. So I hope to see everybody back here tomorrow and Sunday. And until then, bye!